Welcome everyone for our political education event today called Hot Labor Jersey, a panel on the rank and file movement to transform the workplace, our unions, and New Jersey. My name is Isaac Jimenez. I'm a member of North New Jersey DSA. I'm co-chair of Hudson County DSA and a rank and file member of my staff union at Rutgers, who I'm proud will be represented on today's panel. So today we're going to hear from worker organizers from across the many new and exciting workplaces that have filed for union elections, won, and are now bargaining or are trying to bargain for contracts with their employers. Other unions we'll hear from today are part of a large existing and we'll argue strategic industries for which rank and file troublemakers on this call may consider joining in the hope of reforming and restoring a fighting legacy in the labor movement. We'll also be joined by a staffer from a new and exciting project that hopes to connect those wishing to grow as organizers and as troublemakers into the labor movement with not only jobs, but lasting careers. This is not your average job fair, we should say, this political education event. Today we'll be discussing and maybe even debating on some of the merit of whether on the socialist movement joining hands with the labor movement, the movement that's proven to improve the lives of working people, that's made gains we're reminded of on days like today, the 5-day work week, an end to child labor, healthcare, things that we're still seeming to fight for and to keep and to expand upon. How our labor movement can drive us towards socialism, towards social democracy, toward fighting more, but ultimately winning and ruling. I want to start introducing the panel today, a lovely panel of folks, worker organizers, starting with one worker organizer from a very hot topic spot that recently has been filing union elections all over the country. Naya from Starbucks Workers United. Naya is a 1.5-year in-shift supervisor and barista that helped organize the 4th unionized Starbucks in New Jersey. They've been working on the Starbucks Workers United campaign for just over a year. And let's see if we can pin them. Awesome. And they'd also like to share the relief fund for a Summit store organizer who was recently fired, and the National Solidarity Fund. So Naya, if you want to throw those links in the chat later, but we're glad to have you here. Also, I don't know if we can hear you. You went off mute for a moment, but then you mind trying that again? I didn't hear you in the breakout either. Oh no, we can't hear you. Oh no. Oh, okay. Well, we have time to figure that out because I'm going to keep going. Oh, I think that was better. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Next is Purnell. Purnell from Medieval Times Performers United. Purnell is a member of DSA for about 3 years and a stable hand at Medieval Times. What's going on, Purnell?
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Next is my colleague, Jessica. Jessica is a member of the Union of Rutgers Administrators. She was a program coordinator at the Rutgers Graduate School of Education until she was laid off in fall 2022. She came to union organizing through community-based work and activism, as well as grassroots political elections, where she organized with friends and neighbors to solve local issues. Welcome, Jessica. Let's see.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
And next is Labiba. Labiba is staff at the Rank and File Project, the new and exciting project that I mentioned. She's also a member of New York City DSA, so we're cheating a little bit. We have New Yorkers in the house. And she's been involved with much of her chapter's electoral work and in YDSA.
Hey guys, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and next is Phil. Phil is a member of New York City DSA and a rank and file organizer in the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, a local 804. Before moving to the East Coast, he cut his teeth organizing through YDSA and salting at Amazon. Hey, Phil.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And finally, or actually, hopefully not finally, because I think, yeah, they just joined, our friends joined. Next is Steve. Steve is a teacher of 4 years in Passaic Public Schools. He's a DSA member for 3 years and was a field lead for the Joel Brooks campaign in Jersey City. He's also currently a field coordinator for the Right to Counsel JC campaign and is co-chair of the Labor Working Group.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And now finally, our last 2 additions to the panel who, again, could not wait to share in their presence here as they are making history. But Len and Eric are 2 member organizers and the first to file union election at the Rutgers Barnes & Noble in New Brunswick with RWDSU. Hey, Len.
Hi, I'm Lennon. Thank you so much for having us.
And hey,
Hey,
Eric.
thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
We're so
Good to
excited.
be here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's our whole panel. So thank you all for joining us. If folks have questions, so the structure of the panel will be, we'll have questions for the panel and then obviously open it up for questions if folks here want to ask the panel directly or any member specifically, just raise your hand. Yeah, so I guess my first question for folks, and we can go maybe in whichever order, I guess, just if folks want to raise their hand. How did you join your job where you are now? Really simple question, right? Maybe let's start with Naya.
Yeah, sure. So I had looked for a job probably towards middle to end of COVID. And I thought like, I'm trans and biracial. So like I wanted a progressive working environment. So I was like, oh, Starbucks, that's super progressive. I'll go ahead and apply there. Applied, was there in about started working there in like a couple weeks later. And then immediately realized that it's not as progressive as you think.
Thanks so much, Naya. Anyone else want to go into how you joined your job? And where are you now?
I can just quickly say I was working at the New Brunswick Free Public Library in New Brunswick and had a position open up at Rutgers Graduate School of Education. And it seemed exactly like what I wanted to do. And I've done a lot of community-based work, bringing a lot of different constituencies, for example, students, adults learning English, as well as community members. And so it was a perfect fit for me. And the day I started was the day in which Rutgers entirely shut down for COVID. So that was my first day. And I worked for 1.5 years entirely remotely in work that I had done in the past entirely in person, which was a big shift for me.
Talk about, yeah, a total shift in everyone's work life. Yeah, Len, you want to share how you got started in your job?
I've been there for 5 years, pretty close to 5 years now, actually. And I just applied for a job while I was a college student. One of the reasons I do want to unionize is because I think there is a lot of like, our workforce moves like really, really fast, if that makes sense. Like most people just stay there for a semester and stuff. So we don't have a lot of like education. And I think in that regards, they also treat our older workers pretty shitty and just like very, what is the word, like replaceable?
Like disposable too.
Disposable, yeah, exactly. So I wasn't really, I mean, I really like books, so I did want to work there, but I was just looking for any job. I was pretty desperate. And that's how I got there.
Thanks, Lennon. Purnell?
So I started working at Medieval Times at the end of 2019. Lockdown happened within 6 months of me working there. We did stay a few months in just because it's animal care, and that tends to happen. So, you know, we felt really appreciated and needed. Then lockdown happened and we came back, didn't feel it as much. We also have the same issue of a high turnover rate. So a lot of folks feel disrespected and not appreciated. So it was good to kind of know I wasn't the only one feeling that, and that stable hands weren't the only ones feeling that, because that happens a lot in the animal care field.
Totally. Eric.
Yeah, I started at Barnes, I think it was summer 2021. I knew Len worked there. I was working in a window warehouse that was like kind of unbearable during the summer, and Len said they had openings at the bookstore, so I was like, oh, I'll jump on there. Started working in the cafe, and it basically noticed the exact same issues that Len noticed. On top of it, like being in the cafe, we had like horrible management there, who would basically just like harass coworkers and stuff like that. Like we just realized like we really needed like some form of like protection for the coworker, for like us and like our coworkers at the end of the day, because it was kind of ridiculous.
Thanks. Steve.
Yeah, currently I'm a teacher in Passaic. I became a teacher 4 years ago because in high school, I read some Kurt Vonnegut and he said, public schools are the places where democracy is done. And as I went into college and been in DSA, I've been learning more and more how true that is, especially on the side of worker power and every school worker, education worker, from cafeteria to cafeteria worker to counselor to teacher, how much of their place in democracy is their labor power. And I literally have my job right now because of a comrade on the call, Terry, at Passaic Schools. So shout out to him.
Yes, shout out Terry. Phil.
So now I work as a delivery driver at UPS, and coming out of college, I knew I wanted to get some sort of union job that I could organize at. And unfortunately, I came in contact with a DSA member who had recently gotten a UPS job. He was trying to find people to do the same thing. Moved to New York, worked at UPS and organized there. And I thought it sounded like a great idea. So I was like, sure. So after college, I moved out here and I went through the process of like getting initiated in the union and getting like fully on board onto the job. And it's been great. I've had a great time ever since. Actually, like the process of me hearing about the job and getting recruited to get onto this job, it was through like a prototype version of the rank and file project that Labiba is going to talk about later on.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, and I guess that's Jessica, did you go? Oh, you did. Okay. Such a large panel, just getting, yeah. Oh, so yeah, thanks everyone for sharing just your personal experiences. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people enter a job, but there's a lot more specific reasons why people enter the labor movement, and hopefully we can talk about that. I mean, I'm curious on what folks are thinking when they are organizing and getting more involved in their union, and often at sometimes maybe even just organizing their unorganized workplace. And, the rank and file strategy, is about not just building powerful unions where they exist, but organizing the unorganized, right? I know someone mentioned that they were salting Amazon, and certainly, part of putting on this panel was also for folks that are learning and seeing all of this labor militancy in New Jersey, to really think about their place in the labor movement and getting involved, but then also organizing the unorganized and building and even reforming existing unions. Whoever wants to take it up, just raise your hand. But what made you want to unionize, organize, or get involved in your union? If anyone has like a story about that. Eric?
Well, like I feel like with me, and like it's almost like me and Len were just talking about it. Like it's almost like like a pro bono salting, because it was like something we talked about from the beginning, like the idea of like wanting to unionize like at like the job, like it was, but it was almost something like unofficial. And once we like started like feeling it out, then it made just a lot more sense, like the more like I was at the job, like going forward with it, just because it'd been something I had tried, like I wanted to do at other jobs and just like had not been able to. And I know Lennon had been at Barnes like for a while and wanting to enact it, but then it's like, oh, the two of us like doing this together like helped like make it a little more manageable too at the same time, like going into that position with it. So
Thanks so much, Eric. I think I saw Jessica raise her hand next, but yeah, Jessica, you want to answer that?
Sure, I can go at any time too, but yeah, this is actually the first union I've ever been a part of. I'm 50 years old, and I don't know why I've been saying that a lot. Maybe I'm just proud to be a half a century, but I can't believe I haven't been in a union before. But I think one of the things I just joined when I right when I got my position, I joined as a dues paying member. And then I started to try to get involved in different aspects of our union and found that it was a little bit more difficult than I wanted it to be. And finally, what happened for me was that I was called back, as many people were called back after the pandemic was kind of in the second year of the pandemic, and called back to our offices after we'd been working remote. And the first day or two that I was there, the office was 85 degrees and I was 90 degrees. And I was like, why am I working in this office when I could be working from home? And long story short, that became where I started organizing within my workplace, because I knew that I wasn't the only one that didn't want to work in temperatures that were not appropriate for being in the office. And so it was very, very practical for me. It was a practical need of like, this isn't working. This isn't how it should be. And we can change this. So that's where I started.
Yeah, totally. Just identifying the issue, and I'm sure many more folks, even folks on this call, resonate with it. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I started, I'm a teacher, so we sign basically cards on your first day of orientation. You're basically a union member on the first day. And one of the things that really has been driving me to organize right now in my workplace is making a democratic, rank and file based union, especially with the last contract that I had. We had negotiated and bargained. A lot of people were upset about the procedure of how the bargaining went about, very closed, behind closed doors, without people's input. People were upset about the pay scale and salary guide, some other concessions that were made. There were no concessions made, but still, it's a contract year. It's an important, people knew it was an important time, and it just felt like the union leadership didn't do enough to support members getting gains inside the district. And a lot of people are now questioning the democracy of the union and trying to push forward with that. And that's what I really want to be working on, organizing inside my workplace, and especially within NJDA as a whole, And yeah, as Terry says here, we have like a 2-tier contract system within our own local district contract, and that can't be happening. It's anti-solidaristic. It's not good for teachers and workers to be divided. It's worse for our students when we want to be, supporting them and supporting each other. So that's like one big thing that I want to make this already strong, big union, top-down union that people think about in New Jersey into a more democratic, rank and file, even more powerful union than ever, especially inspired by the Rutgers public sector union strikes happening this past week or two.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Steve. Really putting in perspective the top-down nature of unions that we're kind of fighting as well. Len?
Yes, so I forgot how everyone started, but I think I really wanted to have like a union at my job for like some of the reasons you mentioned at the beginning, like how unions are the reason why we even have like fucking child labor laws. And you see even now that a lot of that is being kind of turned over and stuff across the US. And like the weekends, like I want better hours for my coworkers, I want better pay. I would love it if like, I think the way that I've been seeing unionizing recently is that it's probably one of the first steps in like doing a sort of like class conscious, like awakening your class consciousness with your workers. And like, it's one of the first steps I think in gaining power and trying to like get the changes that you want. I think it's like a really, like organizing itself is definitely like hard, but I think it's semi a little easier maybe in the workplace, especially when you're seeing these people every day or you get to see them more often than you might be with like your comrades and your little like communist groups. It's a little harder, I think. But I think like when you do all of that together and stuff, like eventually I think we can all like join hand in hand and do something really powerful. Like I look to unions like I think it was in Oakland, the ones that for like the 7th year in a row, they did not let Israeli ships like dock. I could be misremembering that. Someone please correct me if I am, but they didn't accept like Israeli like cargo and stuff. And I think that's amazing. I would love to do that. Sorry, I would love to do that with our union. I would love to like try to make more like political statements and stuff, like looking at the Rutgers Teachers Union and they're bargaining for the common good. Like we want to jump on that too, you know, it's a corporation, it's like stop stealing our wages, give back to the community and everything. And especially in New Brunswick, all the gentrification that we also then add to, I guess. I don't know, those are some of the reasons why I want a union, besides just the fact that like our pay would be better. Like I know, Jessica, you just mentioned about your about it being like 85 degrees last year. Like over the summer our AC broke, they didn't do anything about it. Our regional manager wouldn't even come in. Pretty sure he was on vacation and stuff. You know, management would like, they're not going to have any issues with all these like things that are actually like really harmful to workers, you know. Eric mentioned the one cafe manager who was extremely racist. She would like constantly call all Asian people, like she would mix up all Asian people and all Black people. And it's just like a really demeaning workplace the way it is right now. So yeah, sorry if I spoke too much.
Not at all, Lynn. And thanks for going into like the later questions about how we're going to be able to transform society. Naya?
So I definitely wanted to unionize, but I didn't want to organize. I'm one of those people who are like accidentally somebody who's organizing my workplace. It started with like our store being closed 2 weeks after I joined the company. And then maybe like 4 months later, our store reopened. And during that time, the first store in Buffalo unionized. So we all get back and we're like, did you hear about Buffalo? Did you hear about Buffalo? So like I come from a UAW family, so I'm like, oh, that's sick. I want to be in a union, of course. I'm ready to sign a card. I don't want to be the person who's handing the cards out, but I'll sign one. So basically it was kind of just like everybody trying to get everybody else to get the cards. And I got the shorter straw, I guess. But from there, like, it's kind of been a thing where not only have I built like a lot of really good relationships in my store, and I feel really proud to work at my store and to be a resource for my coworkers, but also other stores in New Jersey that are also unionized. Like if anybody needs help, like I'm just ready to help. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is just like asking for help and then seeing what help you can give. I think that's the only reason why I ended up organizing my store.
Thanks, Naya. And Purnell?
Well, to touch on, I guess, like a reason why we as a unit organized at medieval times, there had been just general unfair treatment, terrible pay compared to what, you know, like a lot of these guys are stuntmen and horsemen and actors. And you look at Hollywood stuntman salaries and they'll get maybe $800 a stunt, and our guys are getting $15-16 an hour. I'm getting paid, Sable Hands start out at minimum wage, Squire start out at minimum wage, so pay was a big deal. It was just general, you know, wanting respect and to feel fairly compensated for the danger that we put ourselves through. Myself personally, I was kind of in the same boat as Naya, where I didn't necessarily want to organize, but I did want to be part of a union. My goal was kind of just to bark at union busters and be as annoying as possible, and help my coworkers with information and kind of be the person that could be there for counter rhetoric. But I came to realize that not everybody there is as politically inclined as I am and as motivated to organize. So kind of had to step up for at least stables. We've got some great leaders in our other sort of sub departments. I'm one of, I believe, 4 reps that we have right now for each kind of sub department. So there's a lot of leaders there. I just kind of had to be the one for stables. But it's been nice, and it's been good to kind of come together as a unit and stick together and fight this company that's been trying incredibly hard to separate us and tear us down even before we were unionized. Because there's always been chatter about unionizing, and it would always get squashed before we get anywhere, or people would get like, a little sprinkle here and there of like, oh, look, we'll give you this. And they'd kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of dissuade people for a little bit. But we kind of hunkered down, especially after some of our trumpeters got fired for terrible reasons, basically no reason. And then they marked them, I believe, as resigning and not actually fired, so they couldn't collect unemployment. And we were like, all right, that's kind of the last straw. Watch this. And then we organized.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Purnell. Phil, you want to talk about the Teamsters and why you got started organizing there?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, the situation was kind of different because I wasn't involved in new organizing. Like I said, I got the job intending to organize and get involved in union reform work. So I guess I would say I got into it through being like a DSA member and going on random calls like this one, hearing from people who are organizing in the workplace and the importance of it, and just taking it in and being like, wow, that sounds like a great way for me to spend the rest of my life. I think I'm going to try and find any way possible that I can try and insert myself in the labor movement. And then I ended up here.
Thanks, Phil. I love that you mentioned DSA because, I mean, this is a DSA meeting after all, and we are talking about the rank and file strategy, which I don't know if folks have thoughts on it, but we're totally all committed, it seems, on this call to building working class power by building fighting unions, right, where they don't exist, or where they do exist and maybe they need a wake-up call, or they need reform, or they need just bottom-up movement. So I mean, the rank and file strategy is a few things too, and if folks have questions, I think now is also a great time to like open this up for folks on the call, for folks in the meeting that want to ask the panelists something, or talk or share about the rank and file strategy. But the rank and file strategy essentially being socialists in the socialist movement, joining with the labor movement, taking on jobs in strategic sectors, and that can depend on where we are, right? It depends a lot on our location, and that's why we're focusing. And I hope later in this we can talk about, strategically in New Jersey, what this means in growing working class power very strategically, but taking on jobs and then lifelong careers even. And so, how a question, I guess, for anyone, if anyone wants to answer, is, how has your union put the rank and file strategy to work? How have you put it to work? Or how can it, right? We're also I wanted to include on this call workers from Starbucks, Medieval Times, smaller shops that are growing unions where they didn't exist. But how does that contribute to the overall maybe I'm answering the question a little bit, but like creating that sea of class struggle and, popularizing unions where they didn't exist for people to think about it more broadly in their everyday life. But what do folks think about how they're putting the rank and file strategy to work, and how we can put it to work to improve society, right? Jessica.
Yeah, I am not a DSA member, but I work really closely with DSA members and have a lot of anti-capitalist ideas like DSA members and probably other intersecting ideas. But I think for me, I was having this conversation with others who I am organizing with in our union, and some of the things that we're asking for are not radical ideas. It's not radical that we should be paid what we are what we deserve. It's not radical that we should work in an environment that is safe and healthy. It's not radical that we have over 30 people who make $1 million at Rutgers University and over 180 who make $500,000 to actually be paid what we deserve, and also not to be understaffed. So some of these ideas are not radical ideas. They're ideas of what we deserve as workers. And so I think building coalitions across groups is so critical around messages that we all can stand behind. I mean, we also know that at Rutgers in 2020 and 2023, $138 million were spent to fund athletics. So there's a lot of ideas that we can all get behind that are part of returning power to members and having members really fight for what they deserve.
Thanks so much, Jess. Labiba?
Hey everyone. Well, if we're talking about the rank and file strategy, I'd like to introduce everyone to the Rank and File Project, which is a new organization that socialist labor activists around the country are helping build up to help young people take strategic jobs right now our pilot cities are in New York, New Jersey, and in East Bay, to help build independent working class power and to help change the world and build the world that we deserve. I do want to say, like, I'm really, really excited to hear about all this amazing work from everyone. There's so many cool labor activists on this call, and I feel like I have so much to learn from you guys. I think we're, kind of in this really exciting political moment when young people are interested in supporting unions, interested in changing the world, and working class people across the country are interested in getting involved in the labor movement and see the power that workers have in changing the world. And I think a part of our role as socialists is to think, okay, how can we use this energy to direct it towards a long-term project, right? So that's where the Rank and File Project comes in. If you have experience organizing in your workplace, or if you're interested in changing the world and you want to commit your life to helping win the fight for things like Medicare for all, housing for all, or help in the fight against climate change, then this is a place for you. We'll help you connect with jobs in New York, New Jersey. Right now, we're focusing on teaching, nursing, and telecommunications. And then in New Jersey, we're focusing on UPS specifically. So that's kind of what the Rank and File Project is working on right now. We'll have these cohorts that people can sign up for, where you're gonna get support through the whole process. So we'll have these bi-monthly workshops where you can connect with other people who are also taking up jobs in strategic industries, and learn about the labor movement and labor history in the US and across the world. And then we'll also have connect you with mentorship and help you through the process of industrializing, of taking up these jobs so that you feel supported as you take these new jobs and adjust to the new life as a teacher or a nurse or a telecommunication worker or a UPS worker. So that's kind of what we have planned for the programming. We're going to kick off in the fall of this year. I'm going to leave a link in the chat if anyone here is interested in just signing up for updates, or even if you're interested in potentially taking up a job, or considering being part of one of our cohorts, then you can fill out this form and let us know, and we'll talk more with you one-on-one about it. I think that's it for now. That's what the Rank and File project is, and I'm excited to answer any questions about the organization. And I'd love to hear thoughts from everyone about it also.
Thanks so much, Labiba. Yeah, more thoughts, I guess, from folks on the rank and file strategy, how you're putting it to work, or how can you? Lennon?
I like the rank and file strategy. I think it is kind of maybe inevitable and stuff. I think it is a good strategy. I think I want to emphasize on something I think Jessica was saying, where I do think like a lot of our coworkers, like a lot of this isn't like really radical ideas. It's trying to get what our rights are and like demanding like basic respect and everything. And so I think it's important to like meet your current coworkers where they're at and everything, and try to like get that class consciousness going. But I think it also makes sense. I think it kind of like follows a sort of like almost community practice, where obviously like if you have a good job and everything, or even a job that you want to make better, your friends joining on, or like local like community members joining on, it like is a way I think of just like strengthening your community and stuff. But sorry, I feel like I was gonna say something else, but I think it makes sense and everything. That was a really dumb way to put that. I'm sorry.
Not at all. Thanks so much, Len. I like how you mentioned connecting it to meeting people where they're at. And I'm thankful, Labiba, for you being on this call, because it seems like the Rank and File project is about meeting people where they're at and also growing their class consciousness. Maybe folks that aren't ready to, say they're a democratic socialist, right? But totally. Steve?
Yeah, just on the question of the rank and file strategy, I'm a rank and file socialist, and socialist teacher, and I think a lot of what we need to do as teachers in the public sector, as big community leaders inside of many towns across America and in New Jersey, is show people that how labor power works. Like in West Virginia, Chicago, UTLA, we have seen teachers go on strike for better wages for all workers. In UTLA, SEIU, oh my God, I forgot the local's name. I think it's like 109. Let me see it right here. I got it right here. The SEIU local 99 and UTLA went on strike together to basically get their wages, and one of the most basically the cafeteria workers and school workers in the building, their wages from unlivable to a livable wage of at least $35,000. At least 1/3 of that workforce in that SEIU local said that they were homeless or struggling with that. And one thing that UTLA did was do a solidarity strike with their ULP strike, unfair labor practice strike, with that union. And it really showed the power of both the teachers and all the workers across the district coming together for one another. And as well as Chicago with the bargaining for common good. In one of their strikes in 2019, they really pushed for better ratios of nurses to students, better living conditions for students. And that's one big thing I think we have to do here in Jersey, is really use our labor power, our position as community leaders to work with parents and the communities to basically get these big wins. Like, the labor movement isn't just about the workplace. It's about our broader, societal problems, and using our leverage as workers and our connection as workers to basically bring about fundamental change, right? Because I see in my building, my kids' learning is getting worse and worse because we're getting an automated corporate curriculum that was bought by the district with basically COVID funds. And these kids are not getting the learning that they need because we didn't push back enough. Us teachers and the parents together and the community together need to push back against these issues that affect everybody. And one way of my way of doing it, I guess like our way of doing it through the rank and file strategy, is to really enable that class struggle inside the workplace. Find the organic leaders, become the militant minority, whatever, to build that class struggle together within the community around those issues and basically win either reforms that will change our lives or even just, you know, building actual building social movements and polarization in the community so we can actually win fights in the future and for a longer amount of time. It's not just about these these big contract fights lead to bigger wins in the future, step by step by step.
Thanks, Steve. Phil.
So I'm not the only DSA member who got a job at UPS in New York. Like I said, somebody else was already doing that. He recruited me into it. So there has been an attempt at doing the rank and file strategy in this local, at least in a few other locals. So there's like 3 other total DSA members who got jobs at UPS in New York. And a couple of them who have been there for a few years, last year, because they've been working at UPS for a while and have built up like some political clout in the union, they helped organize these rallies called Safety Not Surveillance during the middle of the summer last year. And these rallies were pushing for UPS to install AC or fans in their trucks. Because in the middle of the summer, especially like on the East Coast where it's really humid and hot, it can be like 120, 130 degrees in the back of the truck, just like on a normal day, which obviously is unbearable having to go back there like constantly throughout your workday. So a couple of my comrades organized these like what ended up being pretty big rallies to try and urge UPS to install AC and fans in their trucks. And personally, I wasn't too optimistic that they actually would care enough to do anything about it, at least like until after our contract campaign. But a month or 2 ago, all of my coworkers are posting photos in our group chat saying that actually their management overnight installed fans in everybody's trucks. In part because of all the rallies that my comrades had organized last summer. And I have to say, driving around now, especially in the heat over the last couple of weeks, it's much more manageable having these fans in the back of the truck. And every time I turn them on, I think about my comrades who helped organize those rallies and how grateful I am for them taking the initiative to help push for this.
Right. Thanks, Phil. Eric, want to weigh in?
No, yeah. I think like a lot of what's being talked about, like especially with stuff like that, where it's like the nature of the demands, and then like also meeting people where they're at, like really tie into like the idea of rank and file. I'm not a DSA member, but like I am like organizing the community, and like we're always wanting to get like people more and more involved in like the work that we do and things like that. And then like drawing, like it's easy to draw those contradictions when you're like fighting for something like at work, like to draw those like same contradictions to what's happening like outside of it as well. Like especially when we do like, all right, we tie it to the demands and it's like, oh, look at how like bad our pay is in comparison to everything. And then it's like, oh, tie that to how bad it is outside of this, how we can tie to these other struggles. Like, oh, we don't feel like safe in our workplace. Like that's one of like our key demands and things like that. It's like, oh, why is this the case? Like, why are these like things exacerbated and like put into this like sort of frame of reference and things like that. And so it's just like kind of like making sure we draw those contradictions. The other thing, like I feel like also is like almost seeing like the crackdown of like management is like almost another form of like, right? Because like we've recently had like since we've gone public, some like union busting like type strategies from like our bosses. Like we filed like ULPs in regards to like they say we can't wear like our shirts at work and things like that, or they're saying they've been sending people home early, and then from there it's like almost like it's all these points of agitation that like can then like get like sparked into something bigger than like what they are in the moment, being like, look at how they're cracking down on this and they'll crack down on more. And the only way that like we recognize how we can strengthen ourselves is by coming together. And then it's like drawing that connection outside of it. It's like it's not just our boss trying to crack down on us, it's like all the bosses trying to crack down on us at all the times, and like recognizing that it's like, you know, we're vulnerable here in the store, but look at who else is like more vulnerable outside of it, like at the same time. I think back to Walter Rodney's passage in How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, where he talks about like the bribe the Western worker takes, like, and essentially like being like happy in their creature comforts, like, and so like they're kind of like put into like the sense of like docility. And so it's like at the same time, like that's both like it's the contradiction where it's like it's easy to fall into like that form of like apathy when things are like so bad, just because like, look, I'm comfortable, but then you could like flip that on its axis at the same time. And so I think it's always like kind of keeping that in mind, especially when it's like things are actively happening in the workplace, that you can like spin them to this to these type of gains.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I want to keep hearing folks on this question. I think we even have a question from folks in attendance. I think Bob, if you have a question on how's your union put the rank and file strategy to work, or how can it? Bob Shriek.
I'd have to give some thought to that. I work in the library or CWA. I have to give some thought to that. I did have a question though. Would part-time work qualify for these organizing drives, or does it depend on the industry?
Maybe that's a question for Labiba on the sorts of jobs that we're thinking about, but or it also could be a question for Pernell or Naya too.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is there are some people who may not be in a position to totally switch to new jobs, but they might be able to help out on a part-time basis in some industries.
Yeah. Well, a big part of it is taking up like being a part of the union, and if part-timers are included in the union, then that would be an option. But I don't think that's an option in the industries that we're targeting, as far as I know. I think I'd have to look into that more, honestly.
Thank you.
I do know in UPS though, at the start, usually, I mean, I don't want to say usually, but we have some people who take up part-time work at the start as they're transitioning to work in the union full-time eventually. So, and it's easier to like take a part-time job, and then you have like a better chance at getting a full-time job if you were already kind of working at UPS. So it does make the transition easier. But, in the end, we are looking for people who are like committed to this for their lives. People who are committed in the long term to helping reform their unions, because this isn't the kind of thing where you can just like take a job for a year or two, make some noise and then leave. This is about building relationships with your coworkers over the long run, being like someone trusted in the workplace, really, first and foremost. And then also about helping like work shoulder to shoulder with your coworkers to change things in the workplace and show that, workers have the power to make change, not only in the workplace, but also in society, as Stephen was saying. Yeah, so it is a long-term project. I could see part-time work being helpful in the transition into entering a new industry, though.
Thanks, Labiba. Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, like, it's kind of crazy how the problems within or between workplaces, from a UPS driver to Barnes and Noble workers to Starbucks workers, even to school workers, teachers, are building conditions. Like, for instance, like I had to deal with my first year at Passaic with a heating problem in my building. I didn't have a heater from I think late October to early January or late January, where it was pretty cold. The kids and I were wearing jackets while I was teaching in my room, and we were given a little space heater, and we basically just warmed our hands like it was like a little mini fire in our room. I mean, could start a little mini fire in our room anyway, but yeah. But that's a reoccurring issue within my building too, because it's a 120-year-old building. The whole second floor lost heating for like about a week. So everybody was also teaching in their jackets this year. And there were about 3 or 4 heater fires within the heaters themselves that are really old and we had to evacuate the school for about an hour to make sure that, you know, it was safe for the kids to go back. You know, the air wasn't polluted so much that, you know, we couldn't continue classes. But yeah, that's happened multiple times. And, you know, the reason this happens is because everywhere, even in the public spaces such as school, like they're going to try to cut costs on us and put the burden of our health and lives. And we put our health and lives on the line there, you know, as long as it saves the boss money, even in a public way, you know, and that's why we need to like sort of organize together in our workplaces for these issues over our health, you know, and see that, you know, in one place we have UPS drivers passing out in their cars or during deliveries, and then we have kids literally, you know, learning in the frigid cold. There's got to be a societal class struggle issue to this, and these are sort of things like I would love to bring up to my coworkers in a way that is, you know, digestible to them, you know, and not just be like, oh yeah, rah, rah, socialism, but, you know, in a way that is, there is something here that connects us all and binds us all to a UPS worker, to a Starbucks worker, and a teacher.
Yeah, really quick, want to add like some of the ways that we're hoping that we can put this to work in our chapter, but then among like these job groups is through national networks that exist, right? I mean, you have Starbucks Workers United, which is a national network. But, you know, in a region though, we do have so much activity from unionizing shops to folks going on strike. And I think strike solidarity is another big thing that we're building our capacity to do in a region and as a chapter, you know, starting with this Rutgers strike, but then going into UPS this summer. But then, you know, making sure that places like in medieval times that are escalating action to eventually be able to go on strike or to threaten that, that we could build that capacity together and workers there can learn from these struggles. And I think some of the ways we're also putting it to work is, you know, in strike solidarity, strike support networks, right, as a region. And, you know, thankfully we do have a DSA statewide labor group that isn't just the North New Jersey chapter, but is central and south as well, because a lot of the labor infrastructure is across the whole entire state. Cool. I guess Eric and then Labiba, if y'all want to finish on this question, and then we'll go to the last question, which is just like, you know, looking forward, how we're going to be able to change society in the long term again, and some of maybe the things that we can actually put down as things we want to commit to, and say like, how can we merge our efforts? So Eric, you want to go first on this last question, on the second to last question still, sorry, on, you know, the rank and file strategy.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, it's really is like just at the end of the day, it's like drawing like those contradictions to like what people deal with in the everyday. And it's the fact that it's like yeah, what do we all have in common? It's the fact that like for the most part, like people in the working class like are closer to being poor than everyone else. Like it's like everyone is way closer to being homeless than they are to being like the boss at the end of the day. And it's like making that clear to everyone else. Like in these like struggles, it's like all part of it is like, how do you make someone like a little bit more to the left in like these cases to like make them like recognize these contradictions, because it's like they're all there and they all recognize them. But usually like our go-to like in it, just in the general workplace, is like it's apathy. Like it's like, what are you gonna do at the end of the day? Like it sucks. And then at the same time, it's like, no, but like if we all like can like bring our power together, like our action together with this, it's like instead of like being tired with it, it's like I pick you up and you pick up the next person up, then it's like we can actually help to push and make these things better. Because it's like we know like the bosses don't give a fuck at the end of the, oh sorry, I don't know how much I cuss a lot, like I don't know if that my bad. But yeah, it's just like making people like, I don't know, recognize those little things, and then it draws like to those like light bulb moments. And I think like you can help like them like recognize those things, because once it's like, oh, I get how this connects to like why the homeless person like lost their house like to this like giant corporation at the same time, like this is all connected. And it's like once they can see it, it's like a horrifying vision. Like it's like the, you know, the Clockwork Orange scenes, like their eyes are like forced open at that point. But in the same time, it's like, well, now that you see it, it's like, now help us fix it. Like, because it's like we all have the eyes open now. So it's just like getting people like to that point, like through like kind of connecting like all like the disgusting like visage of like the like capitalist world like forced on us, and it's like, no, yeah, this is all forced on us in this one way. It's not just like that work's tiring and all this stuff. It's like they're pushing this like horrifying worldview on us, and it's like we have the power.
Thanks, Eric. We do have the power. Labiba, want to close us out on the rank and file strategy?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have to go at 6 also, so this might be the last thing I'll say. I think well, first off, again, just so excited to be here. You guys are all so cool. I feel like we're all like, I mean, just what you guys are like on the front lines of really like relearning how to organize in the labor movement, right? I feel like there's kind of been almost like a drought of activity in the US over the past couple of decades, and we're almost like kind of rebuilding an engine without a manual, without like, you know, much guidance. And I think, you know, I'm just like so excited to like learn from everyone here. So anyway, one thing I wanted to clarify, I think the rank and file strategy is about specific strategic industries, right? So it's not like, that's like one thing I wanted to clarify. Like, I think it's about us, like people who want to change the world, build a world where people are put over profit, where everyone has access to healthcare, housing. People want to build that kind of world, like us socialists, us assessing what what specific sectors have political, social, and economic power, and are strategic for us to organize in, and then like building up unions in those sectors into more democratic institutions from the ground up at the rank and file level. And I think, you know, everyone here has kind of like touched on all those different points, but I wanted to like reiterate that it's about specific strategic industries. And, you know, people have mentioned nursing and teaching, for example, in UPS. And I think a good question I like to ask myself about like how much power a union might have or a specific sector might have is, what would happen if all of the people in that sector decide not to go to work one day? What would happen in that city, right? Like, I love asking myself that question because it gets me so excited. Because that's, I feel like, what we're building for through the rank and file strategy. And yeah, like I think about like, okay, what about if all the like nurses and teachers in New York City and New Jersey like decide not to go to work one day because they want to demand for healthcare for everyone, right? The state would have to listen to us, right? And that's what the rank and file strategy is about, right? It's about us taking up like power as workers and not just like changing the conditions in our workplace, but using that power to change the world around us, and building independent working class power. So that's why I'm really excited. And I really hope that like, if you're interested in like, you know, getting involved in labor movement, taking, you know, if you're interested in learning more about the rank and file strategy, please fill out this form that I'm leaving in the chat. I'd love to talk to you one-on-one more. And yeah, I'd just love to like learn more from each other and to figure out how we're gonna build this movement together. Yeah, unfortunately I have to go very soon, so I'm gonna leave the link. I'm really excited to talk to you guys more.
Thanks, Labiba. And I think this is an exciting time to again open up to folks in the meeting who have questions for our panel or want to contribute to the discussion about rank and file, the rank and file movement, and how we can now think about how we can merge our efforts and use unions to transform society, to win Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, things like that. So yeah, any questions or folks want to raise their hand and maybe think about those questions, how we can use our unions to start transforming society. Yes, Suraj, I see Suraj, your hand's raised.
Yeah, so this panel was great so far. It was great hearing all the input. I'm a utility worker. I'm in a union, so a lot of this stuff was definitely very relevant to me. So I think the rank and file strategy, especially when we're thinking about for DSA, because this is was put together by the awesome comrades in North Jersey DSA. When we're thinking about DSA, I think it's like definitely a step forward in like how we're thinking about building like power for the working class, especially like when it comes to a lot of the policy changes that people in DSA want to pursue. Like I feel like a lot of the power really comes out of the shop floor and like mobilizing people, as opposed to, you know, maybe like getting certain unions to rubber stamp certain policy positions. I think having us really be like embedded in actual strikes and in these unions, and getting people who are actually day-to-day workers to be thinking about politics and be thinking about the connection between their day-to-day struggle on the job and politics will really help us to, I guess, build out a working class movement that is really like a different type of politics, and is a type of politics that will help us get closer to socialism. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, I think it's really great that we're bringing, you know, workers together, that more and more that socialists are there when there's strikes, when there's struggles, when there's new organizing, to kind of help build that connection to the wider struggle, right? And that's not new. I mean, you know, Karl Marx even said in the Communist Manifesto that it's the role of socialists to connect the specific struggle to the general struggle, to the broad struggle. So yeah, I just wanted to make that comment. So thanks to everybody on the panel for giving your thoughts and your input.
Yeah, thanks so much, Suraj. See, Naya, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, this might not be answering the question exactly, but and I'm also a non-DSA member. But like personally, seeing at my shop and at adjacent shops that I also help out, you're definitely seeing that a lot of these young, like new labor organizers are moving more left because of their interactions with the DSA, and then being more conscious on like the systems that are causing these really crappy work environments. I know somebody at my shop specifically who is doing the education career path to be like an HR representative, do a full turn, and now is like, how do I become an activist? So I think that these efforts, like just people showing up at like my strikes and stuff that are from DSA, have like already helped radicalize a lot of the people in my shop.
Thanks, Naya. Jessica?
Yeah, I think I have a slightly different perspective on this than may have been shared already. But as again, I'm not a DSA member, but I work collaboratively with so many. And I'm thinking about some of the things that Jane McAlevey has said in some of the trainings about how we have an incredible amount of people in the working class, but unless we're organized together to fight the boss, to fight the billionaire class, to fight the millionaire class, we don't have the power. So I think a lot about how we can use structured organizing and also build relationships, if people have said before, but also really connect with members and individuals' daily realities, and make those connections to why this is happening. Why is it that we can have these working conditions? And I think, so I tend to think of it as really building a broad, wide coalition that socialists are a part of, but so are it has to be broader than that. And so I think about how we can use broader messaging to really get all workers to fight what we need to fight. It's going to take all of us. So it might be a slightly different perspective, or maybe similar than what's been shared.
No, definitely. I think similar, Jess. Eric?
Yeah, and I guess not to speak for Lennon, but like one of the things like we've like driven home is that like we feel like communism like has helped like build our union. Like everything that like we've learned like from like organizing like outside of this has like helped our organizing inside of this, and it's really like formed the way like we go about everything, because you're not going about like, you don't hide what your politics are and what your motives are from like your coworkers, but use that as a driving philosophy to push you forward. But at the same time, you're not like trying to fully indoctrinate them at the moment, but you're showing them, like you're bringing them to the water but not telling them to drink, because you're showing it's like all these contradictions are here, and we have things that have like helped solve these in other societies and that throughout like our history, like in everything. It's like this has happened in X place and Y place. You're drawing these contradictions as it's going on to like help push them further along in that direction. Because like with this like fight, it's like I think if you're not drawing it from a point of like a greater class struggle, then it's like you're missing like a key like advantage at that point. Like if you're just fighting for it like without like the greater class struggle in mind, like it's like sure you can like win everything, but this is like what will really help you win. It'll solidify, make it stronger at the end of the day, because it's really what is like the guiding force between like our like societies, that like we're fighting against like the powers that be that are like so incredibly powerful that like are like facing down on us. And it's like what has beaten this in the past, and that's what we're trying to like use those philosophies in our everyday organizing at the same time. So I think it's just important to keep that in mind. And at the same time, just like once again, you keep in mind that you're meeting people where they're at. Like not everyone is going to be where you're at politically, but that doesn't mean you hide where you are politically. You still like are that, and you stand by it, and you show like how this has pushed you in this direction. And like just that like form of like example and like pointing out those contradictions like consistently, I think will help people get pushed in that direction as well and recognize those contradictions as well.
That's right. Thanks, Eric. I see on Stack, Campbell's on Stack. If you have a question, Campbell.
Yeah, thanks everyone for participating in this panel. I do health justice work here in the chapter. And I think obviously, as Isaac mentioned a minute ago, maybe like a major win for workers everywhere would be something like single payer healthcare. But I'm just curious, are there specific healthcare concerns in each of your unions that are particularly acute right now, or just like really awful? Could be premiums and co-payments, could be like the size of your network, access to prescription drugs, access to reproductive care, access to any number of things. And do you see a sectoral path, a bargaining path, or a opportunity for political organizing? What seems to be the best path forward there? Thanks.
Naya, do you have an answer for that?
Yes, because I would love to talk smack about Starbucks's healthcare. So Starbucks has, without bargaining with us as well, cut back on some of the like healthcare benefits they had during COVID-19, as well as scale back a lot of their trans healthcare. And that's something that we specifically are trying to fight at the bargaining table to get reinstated back, including, including like having our employer pay for our healthcare outright instead of like these premiums that you have to pay for, and then you have to work 20 hours if they can schedule you that. So it's really difficult. Like, yes, I do think that like a bargaining table is something that I can do right now, like fight at the bargaining table. But I do think that like if going to my coworkers and being like, hey, this person is endorsing single payer healthcare, that's something that I think would be even stronger for any sort of worker, because it's not just a win for my shop, it's a win for every shop.
Yeah. Purnell?
So the healthcare at medieval times, I think the one thing they've been able to work with our union on was healthcare related stuff. I'm not super knowledgeable on it. just because I just recently kind of got off my parents' health insurance, and I kind of just get dinged up and deal with it, which I shouldn't do. But there's a big concern, I think, within not just at our castle, but other castles too, of lack of access to like mental health care. We have some nice and some other castles that have been, they deal with clinical depression. I deal with clinical depression. They deal with some other pretty serious issues, and the company kind of just tells them to suck it up. So there are no mental health care professionals within our network. I don't think even our union has any in our networks. I'd have to ask about that. But that would be something that I would definitely need to look into, and that I think I would have to look into soon. And then maybe we could even fight that at the bargaining table. But that would be a start, at least.
Thanks, Purnell. Steve?
Yeah, I feel lucky enough to have the healthcare that I have from the state as an educator. But years back, teachers didn't have to pay any healthcare before Chris Christie came in. His administration basically basically kind of tried to break the unions. And I believe that's because we didn't have enough. The unions basically took a step back, said they're fine. We're a Democrat state. We don't need to basically build up this sort of militancy or even this program of politicizing our members to really, or community members to really fight for healthcare for all. I even have friends that are on the old healthcare plan that is like $400, $500, maybe even hundreds of dollars a month, because their child needs that old healthcare plan that the state does not provide now, because their child has an illness or they have an illness themselves. And I think one thing us in the rank and file socialists and being with this militancy, we need to start politicizing our healthcare to get Medicare for all for everybody, and either in the state or all over the country, because healthcare is a huge problem within everywhere. We're all going to get sick. We're all going to be in debt, and somehow we're all like, our bodies can fall apart at any moment, and as a teacher, we're really a strategic sector because we have a lot of leverage over the state. And even in NJEA, like, it's a big Democratic arm of the I don't want to say it's a complete arm of the Democratic Party, but it's a big donor and helps out a lot. It's very different. Yeah, teachers are very deferential to the liberals, as somebody said in the chat. And that's something we have to stop doing and basically use our political power to fight for everybody else, including Purnell and Naya and everybody in New Jersey and across the United States. So it's not like one workplace is connected to all workplaces. And I loved what Eric was saying before. And I just want to share this Mike Davis quote, just paraphrase it a bit. Some of us, especially with the idea of class struggle and getting those class struggle politics, we're not the vanguards at the gates, as Mike Davis said. We're not those heroes. We're not those people making one fiery speech about, overthrowing the capitalists and taking off their heads. But we are the people, a great rank and file organizer is the person who's more like a patient gardener, like weeding the weeds daily in order to basically bring out those issues and bring out that solidarity slowly and keeping it firm and connecting all those roots together.
Thanks, Steve. I see Whit, your hand's raised. If you have a question.
Yeah, great panel. I really appreciated everybody's comments. And in terms of the rank and file strategy, I guess I'm wondering what your sense is of how to best calibrate meeting people where they're at, particularly when it comes to pushing explicitly left politics. So like bread and butter issues are one thing. Everybody wants higher wages, everybody wants healthcare. That's a different kind of struggle, I think, than say Palestinian solidarity, like Len mentioned. I mean, just to give an example from my own union, I put this in the chat a while earlier, but at the Rutgers AAUP AFT, we passed a resolution in support of Palestinian solidarity a couple of summers ago. We lost a few members over that. There were people who resigned and made very clear they were resigning because of that resolution. And at the same time, Rutgers is a real hotbed for scholars of BDS. We've got Nora Erekat, we've got Sahar Aziz, Deepa Kumar, Jasbir Puar. But as a union, I think we've shied away from explicitly endorsing BDS because we know that would go well beyond where our median member stands. And it would, honestly, I think quite possibly destroy our union. And so, those are the complicated decisions you have to make, right? And so I'm just wondering where you all come down on that, like how to decide where you're meeting people where they're at while still pushing them left, but not going over that line in a way that could be destructive to the union itself by causing rifts and factions and sectarian schisms and that kind of thing. So anyway, yeah, would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, I want to raise my hand on that too, but I see Eric, you raised your hand first. Eric, want to go for it?
I think like one of the things is just like continually you continually talk to your coworkers like about stuff, and like you're kind of like probing and like driving the things that like you really find important like home. And I think you do I think one of the things is making sure like you do have like lines that are drawn like where you won't cross those things, like certain things that are like politically we're not gonna like endorse, like because like also I feel like we've made this like clear in certain things, and it's like we've driven like the points home and like what considerations, like why would it's like okay we shouldn't support like Zionist organizations or things like that, like certain lines in the sand that like you make it clear that it's like why you don't want to cross those lines and everything. And it's I think like especially like I mean like we have Lamia here who's like a part of our like workforce in the union who's like really like driven like the point home of like Palestinian solidarity and everything, if like she wants to talk a little bit more on it too. But it's like there's certain things that like once you make it clear like why you can't like cross these contradictions. And it's also the other thing where it's like we go into like the rank and file organizing, how we get more people involved outside of it, when it's like we draw these contradictions to like, oh, we talk about worker oppression here, how we're oppressed as workers, let's look at the oppressions like any of these other places and why like we literally like can't support it in certain aspects, like why it's like there's certain lines where it's like you may hold this position or something like this, but as a whole we won't cross this line. And I think it's just making that clear in certain aspects. And really like if you're able to like convey yourself, like meet people where they're at, and that like you don't treat them as like you understand like why they're like maybe making these arguments and from this sort of point, but then you like still like have to drive your point home at the end of the day. You're not like backing down from your position. Also, Lamia, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on after that, just because I think you've been really good in the workplace with that.
Wait, I kind of low-key forgot the question, but if it pertains to like Palestinian solidarity, I guess for me with like the union thing and the contradictions that Eric was kind of mentioning slightly about, it kind of drives the way I like work to drive the point is that at the end of the day, Palestinian people are also workers, and they also face the same thing with like gentrification and like houselessness and like being pushed out of their homes. And that's kind of like how America does it to the working people too, but in more discreet ways. And at the end of the day, if we are fighting for our rights here and our equality with like healthcare and pay and like everything else, we should also draw connections from the working labor force in Palestine, because there's like a Nelson Mandela quote that kind of goes, nobody's free until Palestinian people are free. And I feel like with any movement that kind of correlates, whether it's like the working people, whether it's students, whether it is indigenous populations. So yes, I think just drawing the connections, because again, the Palestinian fight is a fight that can be interconnected with multiple issues internationally, and just drawing the connections and making it slightly known how at the end of the day we're all connecting and we're all fighting the same systems when it comes to like capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, and we all kind of want the same things at the end of the day. But yeah, so I'm not sure if I answered the question, but that's kind of my like small focus.
Thanks, Lamia, and welcome. You're a late ad, but Lamia is also with the Barnes & Noble workers in New Brunswick. Again, first unionized. Great to have you all here. And yeah, I guess, Len, you want to weigh in, and then I'll weigh in, and then we'll take a last call for Stack for any last questions, and then we're going to close out. But Len, why don't you share on connecting left issues into the workplace, you know, as that might be difficult, right?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. I feel like as we've been like trying to like organize and unionize and everything, we're trying to like talk to our workers and figure out what their demands would be and everything. You just kind of end up engaging in these political conversations. And I feel like one of like almost like my best friends at work now is this like older man who I think he's like, I don't really know where he falls politically. I think most people would say that he's pretty right leaning. He definitely like he voted for Trump and everything, which I'm not going to shit on because I'm not pro Biden, you know. I don't think Biden's done enough. And so I think the idea of like meeting people where they're at is like, we also have a bunch of coworkers who are pro Biden and everything. And it's kind of like calling out these sort of like inconsistencies and everything. Like when I'm talking to our pro-Trump workers, we'll be talking about it, and eventually they'll be like, yeah, I'm pro-Palestine. Of course, what's happening in Palestine is horrible, horrible, horrible. And then, you know, you talk to the people that are pro-Biden and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, we all like have the same like morals and the same hearts. It's all just like, are we going to stick to electoralism, or are we going to try to find a way out of it? And so I think it's like little conversations and everything with your coworkers. I think that's what I mean, at least when I say like meet them where they are at, you know, like especially with all the ULPs that Barnes and Noble has like taken, I think there are a lot of people who are a little scared right now. And I think like meeting your workers where they're at also applies to that, and like painting it as a larger picture. With the Palestinian stuff, we had a meeting with most of the leaders in the org, and we talked about it. I mean, if we did have workers who were not pro-Palestine, I mean, we would definitely be trying to like talk to them about it more, you know? And I think it's the same thing with the union, you know? It's like when people are like, oh, like what can a union do? You know, you have now many people coming over and like talking about it and showing the support for that. And I think that is true for like all the left ones, you know. We are I think Lamia and I were talking to our coworker yesterday about healthcare, and how he was like saying that in like Europe and stuff, he was like their healthcare is like, it could be free, but like it just takes so long to get it. And I think Lamia and I started talking about like the healthcare in Cuba and stuff, and he could recognize that like Cuba's healthcare is a lot better than both Europe and the US and stuff. And I don't know, then like the conversation, we started moving the conversation into like imperialism and stuff. I don't want to derail too much. But a lot of it's just like a lack of education and stuff, and just sort of like educating your coworkers and having these conversations. I mean, like when I'm talking to like some of my coworkers that I might disagree with politically, I think meeting them where they're at is about finding the common point that you have, and then trying to move from there and being like, so you agree about this, what about this and stuff, and like seeing where it is. I think having faith in your comrades and having faith in your coworkers too is a way of meeting them where they're at. And like I don't want to be too optimistic, but I think just having optimism and stuff, and like knowing that we can all change. Like none of us, I don't think, like the US propaganda machine is so heavy. I know that's probably not a grammatically correct sentence, but it's a lot, you know, like from fucking the public school, private school system, you know, we are constantly being propagandized. And like we all learn as we keep going, and I think we become more left leaning. Obviously some people become more right leaning. I think those people, like, then there's the aspect of like, are people inherently good? And I still think they are. I think I'm definitely derailing. I'm gonna stop talking about that. But I think that's what I mean by meeting people where they're at, and like trying to like see what you have in common and stuff, and then like trying to like make your sort of argument, but also like I don't know. I don't know.
Thanks, Len. No, I think I hear you. And I think I saw a good tweet about how unions can never be all three, but we're trying to have unions that are militant, democratic, and left-leaning. And it's very hard to have like a perfect calibration of all three. But I think it's also very hard to convince a worker who has great like Cadillac healthcare coverage to tell them Medicare for all is what we need, right? So it's about, I think, building a base of support in the community and unions building out into the community in the way that CTU did to later elect city council folk and then now a mayor, in the way that Moore Caucus in New York did to elect Jabari Brisport, who's now fighting for paid parental leave and stuff like that. And I think it's about meeting people where they're at, obviously, and then finding that constituency that is going to go to bat for these issues, including BDS, and including and on Witt's comment about was this union ready? It seems like maybe there needed to be more community support, including in a lot of other areas that Rutgers is trying to win gains and demands on, like in the community. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that and say how building power in unions can also mean cementing that power and wins in electoral work too. And then, yeah, I guess final stack we have, I guess I saw a few names, but if they want to come back, we have like a moment, but otherwise, Lamia, you want to close us out?
Yeah, sure. I was just gonna say, I feel like with like kind of talking about like leftist ideology within a workplace, like that's something like Lennon and Eric and I kind of face a lot at like Barnes and Nobles, especially with like the general college population and like the big in general like Zionist population at Rutgers. I feel like a lot of it is kind of going based on what Lennon was saying, is like meeting people where they're at and just allowing them to ask questions. I know like for me, when I first started working at Barnes and Nobles, I wasn't as leftist as I currently am, but definitely like talking to them and them being reciprocative and like allowing me to ask questions and like guiding me in towards like, more leftist ideology and like books and stuff has helped me round my political ideology a little bit. And also, I feel like with us kind of going public, we've also been able to like work with more organizations like the Teachers Union at Rutgers. There's a bunch of other like leftist oriented orgs throughout the campus and the community in general that we've been working with, and kind of just like setting up like political, I guess, principles together and kind of coming together and just saying like, this is what as a group we should be accepting of, and this is what like our union stands for and why we're kind of opening this union and why it matters to have this union. I feel like that also brings more people into the like picture of like, oh, like, maybe like the leftist ideology really is the path for like equality and like humanism and like just a safe environment for everybody.
Thanks, Lamia. Naya, then Steve, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, so a strategy that we use organizing like my store and other stores as well, and that we tell other organizers for Starbucks Workers United is try to avoid like the big buzzword before you like actually get that person there. So like don't say union, don't say universal healthcare for all. To give them the points, right, over time, like in these conversations that you're having with people, and then they'll kind of come around it to themselves. And then that's kind of when you're like, oh yeah, like if we are able to speak or have like more say in our workplace, and like we should be able to, like democratically choose like what we're doing, or even something like, it sucks that like, if I ever lose this job, I'm not going to have any healthcare. Like I'm going to have like a COBRA plan. That's going to suck. I won't be able to afford that without a job. Like you do these talking points before you get to like that whole, or you drop the big word is what I'm saying. And that's something that has helped me, at least at my shop, with not just like organizing things, but also getting people maybe a bit more left than Democrat, So I think that's definitely a strategy to think about and see if that's something that would work for you and the people you're conversating with.
Steve?
Yeah, I think those are great strategies that everybody has said. And I even run into my own issues talking about, right to counsel. Like sometimes outside of work, I like to just talk about what I'm doing. Right to counsel is a campaign for getting tenants guaranteed legal representation in court through City Hall in Jersey City. And some of my best friends at work are like, one of my best friends at work is a property owner and landlord and owns 1 or 2 properties. And I just have to like face the fact that like, that is the way that they see themselves as being socially mobile as a teacher, is by buying these properties. And I talk to her and some others about right to counsel, and they seem, they have their worries about that sort of thing, talking about tenants, all this stuff. But, ultimately they support these sort of things because they see a lot of evictions by corporate landlords and management companies as totally unjustified whatsoever, and just trying to kick people out of their homes just for plain profit, and even with corporate curriculums coming in and consultants coming in, that's a way of talking about how capital's interests and profit making off of our school system. We all see it around us in some way. So just like bit by bit, understanding, taking into people's consideration their perspectives. That's what builds democracy in a union, and trying to really argue these things out and influence. Because I think ultimately everybody here is right. I think our message will be pushed through in their minds at some point. Since I think we do have, as a socialist, I think we do have the correct perspective and most humanitarian perspective. I hate to say, we ultimately will move the Overton window, at some point. Yeah, and I just want to thank everybody for being here. That I loved everybody's perspectives here.
Yes, thanks everyone for joining and for giving us your 2 minutes overtime. But I want to thank the panel again for sharing their experiences, their perspectives, and also their work and strategy as a rank and file organizer. I guess I will hand it back over to our chair, but if anyone also would like to end with any shout outs or anything or plugs, feel free to throw it in the chat. But yeah, thanks all for a really great panel.